Okay, welcome back to WSHS Algebra 1 Virtual Tutor. What we are working on today is linear equations and, more importantly, a special word called slope. Slope you're going to see a lot. You might have learned about slope a little bit in middle school, but we're going to do a lot more with slope this year in Algebra 1, and you'll see it again a lot next year in geometry as well. So make sure you know and can identify what slope is, okay? So the word slope actually means the gradient, incline, or pitch, and is used to describe the measurement of the steepness of a line. So how steep is the line? Typically, we see slope a lot, or we talk about slope like when you're skiing. So if you have a mountain, right, typically you would ski down the mountain. You might have heard of the word ski slope because it's going in a specific direction. We see slope in roofs. So if you have the roof of a house, some roofs have really high pitches, right? So they're really steep pitch of the roof. Other roofs may have some that are not so steep, right? So slope can be found anywhere. We typically see it a lot in like buildings or just anywhere in the real world. So slope can be positive, negative. It could even be 0 or undefined, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But these are the these are the 4 types of slopes you can have. You can have a positive slope, a negative slope, a 0 slope, or an undefined slope. So we'll talk about what that also means and what it looks like. Okay, so for example, this is our little ski bird friend here. Ski bird is going, let's see, up the mountain in this one, right? So ski bird is going up the mountain. Isn't it more difficult to try to ski up a mountain, right? So you have positive resistance going against you here. But what we do is we can actually, I know he's going up because I would read the graph from left to right, just like you read a sentence. Okay, so we read from left to right, just like a story or a sentence. So if I'm looking at this from left to right, I can see that the bird is going up the mountain, right? So this would be considered a positive slope. Okay. Now we see the bird going down the mountain or the ski slope here. And I know he's going down because, again, I'm reading from left to right. So I can see from here to here, he's going down. Okay. So when he's going down the mountain, he doesn't need as much resistance going against him. So there's negative resistance there. So when going down, this is considered a negative slope. Okay, so again, we're reading from left to right. In the first one, looking left to right, the bird was going up, so that's positive. In the second one, again, reading from left to right, the bird is going down. Then we've got my third one here. If you've ever tried to go skiing and you reach all the way, or you reach it all the way to the bottom of the mountain, and you're trying to move with those skis on your feet, and you're trying to go against a flat surface like this, will you move very far? Or will you go at a fast pace? Not really, right? You're kind of stuck there. So here we're reading from left to right, and this is actually a perfect horizontal line, right? So when we see this, we see horizontal, meaning across, right? Straight across. Horizontal line actually has a 0 slope because he can't move very far from here, right? He's not going up, not going down, kind of just stuck there. Okay, and then this last one here, Okay. If I'm reading this from left to right, I actually see that this is a perfect vertical line. Would you want to go ski down this mountain? Or if you consider this a cliff, if you're at the top, would you jump off that cliff? I hope not, right? So this perfect vertical line here, if you see a vertical line, meaning the line is going straight up and down, this would be considered an undefined slope. So remember, undefined means it does not exist, right? So jokingly, if this bird was going to go down the mountain and wasn't able to fly, let's assume, he'd probably have very little chance of surviving after this, right? So maybe the bird won't exist anymore. So consider that undefined or non-existent. Okay, so this is an undefined slope if you see a vertical line. Okay, so knowing those, knowing what a positive, a negative, a zero, and an undefined slope looks like, what we can do is now apply this. Okay, so example one, find a slope given a graph. Okay, so we're going to be given a picture, and unfortunately number two and number one are backwards, but that's okay. So we're going to be given a graph or a picture of this here. And what we need to do is figure out if we find any 2 points on the line, okay, and whether they are going up or down, whether they are staying steady, right, across like a horizontal line, or whether it's a vertical line. And that will determine whether it is positive, negative, zero, or undefined. And we can also go ahead and actually find what the slope is. Okay, so what you're going to do to find the slope, and slope typically is known as the rise over the run. Okay, so the rise is the up and down part. The run is the horizontal part. Okay, so the way we do this one, we'll start with number two, is we can pick any 2 points on the line. So I want to pick points where I can easily see what the actual value is, right? So like this point here is 0, 3. And this point here, let's say, I can choose any 2 points that I want. Okay, now to get from here to here, did I have a rise? Did I move up or down anywhere? Okay, I did not go up because if I went up, the other point would be over here. I did not go down because if I went down, we'll see it somewhere down here. So I didn't have a rise on this one. There was no rise. We didn't go up anywhere. Okay, so the rise would actually be 0. Okay, and the run, we did run. When you run, you go across, okay, left or right. So we ran how many spaces from this point to this point here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so our rise was 0 because we didn't move up or down, but our run was 3 because we did move over from the first point here to this point over here. We moved over 3 spaces. So my slope would actually be equal to 0 because 0 divided by 3 is equal to 0, right? Anytime we see a fraction that represents division there. And we also knew that this was 0 slope anyway, because if we looked at the previous example, remember we were looking at the graph of the ski bird here, that horizontal line, right, like this one right here, that horizontal line meant 0 slope. So we didn't even have to calculate. If we can just remember that anytime we have a horizontal line, we will have a 0 slope, then that's good as well. Okay, the next one here, or number one, what we want to do again, slope would be over the run. Rise again is going up and down, run is going left to right. So our rise, I can pick any 2 points that I want to. I don't want to pick a point like right here. The reason I don't want to pick that point is because I can't really tell exactly what coordinate pair that is, okay? So I want to make sure I'm picking a point where I can easily see the coordinate pair. This coordinate pair here would be 2, 1, right? I can pick them down anywhere you want, really, you can easily read it. Okay? So after points, what you want to do is count the rise and count the run. Okay, so we're going to count, when I pick my 2 points, I'm going to kind of draw and make like a triangle between them, okay? All right, so we're going to count the rise. How many spaces did I go up before I moved over? Okay, so from this point here, we're going to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 spaces, right? So we went up 3 and we went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my rise is going to be 3 and my run is going to be 5. Okay, so this is my slope here. Now, what kind of slope is this? Is this positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Remember, if you're reading this or looking at it from left to right, we actually went up, right? So if I started here from left, I see that it is going up left to right. So this would be a positive slope. And I know it's a positive slope as well because my answer when I calculated the rise and run, isn't this a positive number? Right? It is. So that also tells me that it is positive slope. Okay? Let's try a couple more. All right, let's look at number 3. I want to calculate the slope or find the slope given this graph. So I want to pick any 2 points on this line that I see. Let's say I want to do these 2 right here. Okay, then between the points, I'm going to draw a triangle. Okay, and then I'm going to count the rise. Remember, the rise is the up and down. The run is the left to right. And we're going to put it in a fraction. Okay, so the rise here, the up and down part, is 2, right? Because there's only 2 spaces right here. Then the run over here is also 2, because there's 2 spaces, 2 boxes there. So we have 2 over 2, and 2 over 2 is equal to 1, right? However, would this be, I know my number's positive, but would I have a positive slope? We said positive slopes mean that when we look at the graph from left to right, it's supposed to be going up. Okay, well, if you look at this graph, here's the left side of the graph. Okay, from left to right, this is actually going down. Do we agree? It is going down. So what I can do is, after I do my calculation, knowing that this is a negative slope, I just go ahead and make it a negative. So my answer would be -1. Okay, I want to show you something else with this one again too. If I didn't choose those 2 points, remember I said it really doesn't matter what 2 points you choose. I'm going to show you if I chose any 2 different points, would I still get the same answer as -1? Okay, so we said find your 2 points, then we're going to connect them in like a triangle form. The rise is the up and down part, so we're talking about this part right here. So my rise is, how many spaces did I go up? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And my run is the left to right part, right? So how many spaces did we run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we still have 6 over 6, right? And 6 over 6 is still equal to 1 when you divide them. We also know that if we're reading this graph from left to right, it is going down. So we have a negative slope. So we should have -1 as our answer. Okay, so again, it doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. All right, and number 4. Number 4, okay, we're going to pick any 2 points that we want. And you might already know what kind of slope this is, because if this is a vertical line, remember, like going off the cliff here, we don't want to go off the cliff because you might end up non-existent. So we don't want that. But this vertical line should represent an undefined slope. And an undefined slope is anytime we have, or undefined number is because we have 0 in the denominator. So how do I know I have 0 in denominator? So I'm just going to show you mathematically. Okay, so we said like we're going to follow the rules, pick any 2 points, okay, and then we're going to calculate our rise over our run. It's always rise over run. The rise is the up and down, the run is the left to right. And if you think about it this way, you're a baby. Typically you learn to stand up, right, before you learn to run. Okay, you learn to rise and stand up before you run. Okay, you don't start running straight off the ground. You've got to stand up first before you run, right? So we always do the rise over the run. Okay, so between these 2 points here, I'm going to start at the point in the bottom. Okay, we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. 6. And did I move over? Did I run anywhere to the left or to the right? I can't make a triangle out of these 2 points, right? Without creating a third point here anywhere. So my 0 because I did not run anywhere. All I did was rise here. So if you try to calculate this, 6 divided by 0 in the denominator, your calculator is going to give you an error message. Okay, and the reason why it gives you an error message is because if you have 0 in the denominator, technically this is non-existent. This is undefined. So this is why our answer here would be undefined as far as my slope goes. All right. Okay, example 2, finding the slope given a linear equation. A linear equation just means equation of a line. Okay, so you need to memorize this. This is very important. The equation of a line, and this is known as slope-intercept form, is represented by y equals mx plus b. You're going to see this a lot, y equals mx plus b. And this is called slope-intercept form. So you'll see this in directions. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. So when they say that, they want you to put it just like this, set up just like this, where y is on the left side here. You have an equal sign and then a number in front of x. Okay, so the M actually stands for, we can think M for move, which is really the slope. Okay, the M is the slope. We think M, we move. We move the slope, okay? B stands for begin, which is really known as the y-intercept. Okay, the y-intercept is also where it crosses the y-axis. So where the line crosses the y-axis. So what we want to do, we're going to learn a little bit more as far as like what we move, where we begin a little bit later. But for now, we need to be able to identify where is the slope in this equation. And the slope is usually the one, or always, not usually, it's always the one that is right in front of the x. Okay? That is always my slope. It is not the b or the number after the x. It is always the number in front of the x. Okay, so this says here, if the equation is not in slope-intercept form, so if it's not in this format, we actually have to rearrange it. And you guys have actually been practicing rearranging these for a while. You just didn't know what you were really doing it for. And I kind of kept telling you, or your teachers might have told you, we're going to use this later, we're going to use this later. And now is the time that we're really using this. So you guys actually already know how to do this. You just didn't realize it yet. Okay, so we want to put it in this form because we could easily identify what the M and what the B is when we rearrange like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and try one. So letter A says find the slope of each line. So we know the slope again, y equals mx plus b. It's always this number right here in front of the x. So if I look at this equation, this is nice and pretty for me. It's already written in y equals mx plus b form. Now I know that this is not an actual plus sign, but that's okay. Technically this is like plus a negative. Okay, so this could either be minus, it can be plus. That's okay. What we're really focusing on, because the question said find the slope, right? So all we really need is that number in front of the x. And if you look, this number in front of the x would actually be my slope. So my slope, and we say m, equals 4/3. So what this is saying is really that 4 is my rise. That means in my graph, like if I were to see a picture of this, I would see that I'm going up 4, and then I would be running or going to the left or the right 3 spaces, okay? And this is a positive slope, right? Because we have a positive number. So here's my answer. Okay, now B. If I look at B, this is what I mean by rearranging, okay? So this one still says find the slope of the line. Now, is this written, is the 2y minus 5x equals 8 written like this, in this format, where the y is by itself, and then we have on the other side, we have the x and the number. And it's not, right? It's not written that way. So what we need to do is actually rearrange this. So to do that, to get y alone, I need to solve for y. And that's what you have been learning before. Solve for y. So if I look at 2y minus 5x equals, how would I get y by itself? So you might remember what we would have to do is move negative 5x over, right? So we would have to x to both sides. So that would give me 2y equals, and if we want it in mx plus b, we want the term with the x to be written first. So 5x plus, and this is an 8 over here, right? 5x plus 8. Y is still not alone, or y is still not alone. So what I need to do is divide by 2. So you remember that? Divide everything by 2. So my answer here, well, not answer yet, but my new equation would be y equals, and you want to leave this as a fraction. Okay, so 5 over 2, unless you can reduce it or unless it becomes a whole number, x plus, and what is 8 divided by 2? 8 divided by 2 is 4. So if this is my new equation right here, now it's in y equals mx plus b form. Now it kind of looks like this, right? So if it looks like this, I can easily determine what my slope is, because the slope, again, is the number that is in front of the x, right? So my slope here is actually 5 over 2. M equals 5 over 2. So that means my rise would be going up 5, and then my run would be going over 2. Okay, so we're going to do a little more practice rearranging just like that, because they're not going to always be written nice and neatly in slope-intercept form for us. Most of the time, we're going to have to rearrange. Okay, so again, it says find the slope. So I can't say that the slope is negative 7. First of all, I've got 2 x's over here, right? When I'm supposed to only have one of them written down. Secondly, this is not in y equals mx plus b form. This is not in slope-intercept form. So what I need to do is rearrange it like this. Okay, so rearranging, really we're solving for y. We want y to be by itself on this side, on the left side. Okay, so what I would have to do here to get y alone, I'm going to have to move everything over to the right. And I can actually take them at the same time if I wanted to here, because I've got both of these that need to go over. Okay, so if I have a positive 3, then to move it over, I would have to subtract 3, right? And if I have a negative 7x, to move that over, I'm going to have to add 7x. So we're going to do this to both sides. What you do to one, you must do to the other. So that's going to leave me with y equals negative 7x plus 7x minus 3. Now if you notice here, I've got 2 like terms. not only do I have these like terms, I actually am going to notice that these are going to cancel out, right? Negative 7x plus 7x is actually 0x. Okay, so now that this is written in slope-intercept form, what do you notice here? If I left it as 0x, this is actually my slope. My slope is 0. Okay, so do you remember what a 0 slope looks like? A 0 slope would actually look like a horizontal line. Okay, all right, so my slope is 0. If I did not, technically, the way we would actually see this written more is if there are 0 x's left, that means that doesn't exist anymore, right? It's not there. So we might see the equation written like this, y equals negative 3, because the 0x, that disappeared. So if we see something like this, then still my slope is 0 because I still don't have a number in front of x. X isn't even there. So that means there is no number in front of x, so that means slope is 0, okay? All right. So that one was m equals 0. And then letter D, one more time. So we have 2x equals 4y minus 9. Okay, so what we can do here is we want to make sure it's written in y equals mx plus b form, and it's not written that way. Okay, so what I want to do, if I notice the y is over here, I basically need to get y by itself, right? I'm going to write that a little bit bigger. 2x equals 4y minus 9. If I want to get y by itself, then I would need to move this negative 9 over first, right? It doesn't matter if the y is on the left or the right. That's okay. As long as we have y alone, that's the main point. So first I would have to add 9 to both sides. So that's going to give me 2x plus 9 equals 4y. Y is still not alone. The 4 is being multiplied by y. So to get rid of it, I'm going to have to divide everything by the 4. Okay? So that would leave me with 2 divided by 4. If you divide that, that's actually 0.5, but we can't have decimals because slope is supposed to be rise over 1. Slope is a fraction, so we need to leave it as a fraction, okay? So 2 divided by 4 is 0.5, but you would change it back to fraction, and that would give you 1/2. So this is 1/2 x plus, and then 9 over 4 would stay, because if you divided it and change it back to a fraction, it's going to give you the same thing. So this is my new equation. And even though it's not written with the y on the left, it's still actually the same thing, right? Symmetric property says we can actually switch these over the equal sign. So y equals mx plus b. We've got it now, right? So my m, my slope, is the number in front of the x. And it's the number in front of the x as long as it's written in slope-intercept form, which is y by itself, and then mx plus b on the other side. Okay, last part here. Now we're going to find the slope given 2 points. So we've found the slope looking at a graph. We found the slope looking at an equation, right? And now we're going to find the slope looking at 2 points. So whenever we have 2 points, we're talking about 2 coordinate points. Okay, this slope formula, and this is very, very important for you to remember. You will see this a lot in not only this course, Algebra 1, but you'll see this a lot in geometry as well, okay, next year. So you want to make sure you memorize that. And really the only thing you're doing is you are subtracting the y's, subtracting the x's, and the y goes on top of x. Okay, subtract y's on top, subtract x's on the bottom. If you can remember that, then you know your formula, okay? Subtract y's on top, subtract x's on the bottom. So what do I mean by y's and x's? Well, you're given a coordinate point. With slope, we usually see them on graphs, right? So on a graph, you always have a coordinate point, and the first number is typically the x, the second number is typically the y. Or always, I shouldn't say typically. It always works out that way. But because we have 2 points, we have 2 x's and we have 2 y's. So what we want to do is label them. Okay, this 4 is going to be my first x, so we call that x1. This 5 is going to be my first y, so we call that y1. Okay, or what we can do is we know that this is the first point, right? This is the x, this is the y, this is the x, this is the y. So these are from my first point, so we name them 1 and 1. The -2 and the -6 are from my second point, so we name them x2, y2. So that's where that y2, y1, x2, x1 comes from. Okay? And I can go ahead and I'll just go straight across B and C and do the same thing. If this is my first point, this is the x, this is the y, this is the x, this is the y. So the 3, 3 is my first point, so x1, y1. The 3, 8 is my second point, so x2, y2. And for C, -4, 5. -4 is the x, 5 is the y, right? X comes before y. X before y. And then first point, second point. Okay? Simple stuff. All right, so slope formula, we said subtract the y's on top. Well, my y's are, and you can do, if you wanted to do the first point, that's okay, but you have to be consistent with your order, okay? So I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and follow along with the formula. What we want to do is we're putting the second number first. So y2 minus y1. So -6 minus 5, right? y2 minus y1 over x2, -2, minus x1, which is 4. Okay, I'm going to kind of do step by step straight across. It's the same thing here. All right, so again, y minus y1, so this would be 8 minus 3 over x2 minus x1, so 3 minus 3. Letter C, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So you want to keep those signs the way they are, okay? Don't change anything. All right, next step. When you have this, after you set it up, you're going to want to subtract, right? -6 minus 5 is actually -11 in the top, and then in my denominator on the bottom here, -2 minus 4 is -6. Okay? For B, 8 minus 3 is -5. I'm sorry, that's +5. What am I thinking? And 3 minus 3 is 0. Letter C, -5 minus 5 is actually -10 in the numerator. And then 4 minus -4 is actually a +8. Okay, so with my slope, I want to make sure I simplify at the very end. And I'm labeling it M because M stands for slope, or M stands for move, right? And that's the letter for slope. Okay, so -11 divided by -6. That's going to give you a fraction. I'm sorry, it's going to give you a decimal, but you've got to change it back to fraction. If you changed it back to a fraction, you'll notice it's going to give you +11 over 6. Now the reason is because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So this is my answer. Okay? Next part here, letter B. We did our setting up, we subtracted, now we do the division part. Okay? 5 divided by 0. If you put that in the calculator, you're going to get an error message. Okay? And the reason why it's an error message is because it's undefined. And the reason it is undefined is because we have the 0 in the denominator. You cannot have 0 in the denominator. It's okay to have 0 in the numerator in the top, but not in the denominator. Okay, and letter C, -10 divided by 8. Okay, so if you divided that, you're going to get a decimal. And if you change it back to a fraction, you're going to get negative. Remember, I keep saying change back to fraction. You remember what to press in the calculator? Math and then the frac option, and then enter. Okay, and that is how you find the slope given 2 points. You got to put it in your formula, subtract, divide, simplify. So really quickly though, if my slope is 11 over 6, that means I'm going up, right? My rise is 11, my run is 6. So that would look something like this, like a positive line, a positive slope going up. Do you remember what an undefined slope looked like? If I had 0 in the bottom, right, undefined, that looked like a vertical line, right, like a cliff, okay? If this was your cliff here, right, like the rock, and then typically underneath we might have some water or something like that. All right, so undefined slope looks like a vertical line. And then the last one here, negative 5 over 2, negative means that the line is going down from left to right, remember? So we would have something like that. Okay? All right, and that is it for today.